My original intention was to discuss my Compendium, 1966 to 2015, in terms of the vicissitudes of a media art practice. How difficult it was, and still is, to get the technologies to do something really interesting. Having too little time for content after you've spent so much time struggling to build the technological platform. How difficult it was and still is to be independent of the market discourse and market forces. How difficult and often falling short when one is creating art experiences that have little or no precedent compared with painters and sculptors who build on a rich past. And how difficult in general it is to reimagine and reformulate the identity and role of contemporary art in society. But I changed my mind, thinking it would be more interesting to look at this compendium by toying and tying things together, to weave the retrospective, contingent, and serendipitous coherence of some of my research obsessions over 50-odd years. So this is divided into 10 obsessions. It's a lot of material. It's going to be a kind of kaleidoscope of images. I won't spend too much time explaining things because all these works now are recently published on my website, and also there is now a USB publication. So there is an opportunity for you to delve deeper into any of these works. This is indeed more like a quilt, a tapestry of things. 1, from participation to interactivity and embodiment, the question of the body of the viewer and its engagement with the artwork. The 60s, performance, happening body. The notion of the art consumer as a participant, and legible city, the viewer as bicyclist, the viewer looking up at images in the sky, the viewer looking down at images on the ground, the viewer caught between images that are above and below, floating in a media space. Do you think you could bring these two lights a little bit down? Is that possible? I'm just feeling a little bit blinded here. And also, I mean, we could also take away the lights from the stage completely. That would help to make the image more apparent. Is that okay? The image that surrounds you, and then the possibility that the image is something you can take in your hands and you can just move around freely to explore a virtual image space by moving the actual window itself. And then, of course, the avatar body. This is a later version of Legible City where multiple bicyclists are bicycling around in the Legible City and can meet each other as avatars. And then the surrogate body, the surrogate body in dialogue with your own body as an interface to the virtual, the worlds of representation. The puppet has sensors in all its joints so that as you are manipulating the mannequin, you are actually transforming both the audio and visual space in which you are immersed. And the represented body. This subway, it's work done in Shanghai. The handle is a handle from a metro train in Shanghai. Every time you pull the handle, they will fall. And they will fall differently every time. They will never repeat themselves. From expanded cinema to augmented and mixed reality, the question of the relationship between the imaginary and the real, confrontation and confluence. This is the glove screen. This was actually an expanded cinema projection screen. The film is projected from behind. It goes into the surgical gloves, and you have a switch on the floor so that you can inflate the gloves and let them fall again. And as they lift up, you see the actual movie moving up through the hands and into the fingertips. So you are watching the movie in the fingertips of these hands. And Anne-Marie already told you a little about the Corpus Cinema, which was basically a projection screen that was a volume. And inside this volume, various things could happen. So it was like materializing the movie and using inflatables and pyrotechnics and performance and many other material actions to interact with the projected image. And here the projection screen is taken off the wall and put onto the floor and invites the audience to jump in so that the audience's own body is modulating the projected image and become and sort of share the same space as the cinematic space. Indeed, projection of day sky at night, and then another work, Rainbow, with some kind of interesting, let's say, augmented reality, because the rainbow itself, the artificial rainbow, has water falling from it, a very fine spray of water. And when the sunlight hits that in the right angle, you will see that it's actually a rainbow maker. So it's a rainbow that builds, that creates real rainbows. This is a work called Viewpoint. I'm going to talk about this in a little more detail because it's certainly, for me, a very important work, a real milestone work, but a little difficult to describe. I'll do my best. So a lot of the works I've been doing depend on optical systems. And this is an optical system where the viewer is looking through a semi-transparent mirror. And you see the slide projector is projecting onto the mirror, onto the screen, and then the image is reflected back through the mirror. And the screen material is a very special material. It's a retro-reflective material. So all the light comes back in the same direction. Now what this means in practice is that for people who are standing around in the space and they see the screen, they see nothing on the screen. It's just a grey surface. But if you are looking through this console, you actually see a perfect conjunction of projected image and the environment. And you can see that the projected image actually is a picture of the space behind the screen, and you see the window continues and the space continues. So basically it's creating a window back into the space. And you see me walking there. So this is a pre-recorded event where I'm walking with a pickaxe and smashing the window. And this is so two things are happening in parallel. One is the real world of people who are walking around in the space and are completely oblivious to what is happening on the screen. For them, the screen is just a grey surface. But through this viewing device, you see this conjunction of real and virtual space, of spaces of representation. Now, this strategies of augmented reality were something which I always felt was a very fundamental opportunity in media art. This is an early experiment. You see an Apple II computer, very simple wireframe, 3D wireframe objects floating in the room, but you can rotate the monitor and you can look up and down and you can discover these objects in the space. And this is a work done where this augmented reality system was also used in a performance context. So this woman is a real performer on a real swing, swinging in the space. And through the viewing console, you also see the computer-generated swing, which is also swinging in the same space that she is swinging. This leads to a work called Unwanted Tear, which was, we have a bad connection somewhere. Okay, let's see if we can. Made in Paris at La Villette. This is also, again, an optical device which allows an augmented reality to be embodied. And so you see the image floating out in the museum. It floats out about 8 or 10 meters away from where you are looking. And again, people who are walking around in the space are oblivious to the fact that these two realities are converging. And here there is a more narrative structure, because the piece Unwanted Tear talks about archaic sciences embedded, or like memories or ghosts of archaic sciences which are embedded in this museum of contemporary scientific knowledge. And the legible city, and this aspect of, let's say, the augmentation of the real, to understand that the legible city are real cities, that this is Amsterdam with all its canals, and each letter actually is a building, represents or replaces a real building, and the proportion of those letters is also scaled to the real buildings. So this landscape of text is actually it actually models the real city with its buildings. And this work, Conversations, is again taking these, let's say, conjunctions of real and virtual, people being able to enter a narrative space, watch the development of a certain story, a storytelling. It's actually a story about a quite famous jail escape. And 3 different people can enter this space. They see each other as avatars. They watch the dramatic action. They can talk to each other. They can discuss what is happening. And they can also interrogate certain key characters. So let's say this is an experiment, certainly in looking for strategies for interactive narrative and in an augmented reality space. This is a work called Makeable Love. It's based on a text of Samuel Beckett, The Lost Ones. Beckett describes a community of people who are living in a cylinder. So this has been modeled here. You see this community of computational agents, of algorithmically driven humanoids who, at the same time, their behavior is determined by the Beckett text, and so they are scripted basically by the Beckett text. But there is a very important conjunction here of real and virtual, in the sense of a mixed reality. You are pointing a torch into this space. You send in a beam of virtual light to illuminate these characters, but you'll notice that the beam seems to go all the way through and illuminate the other person who is on the other side of the space. So this virtual torchlight illuminates both the virtual world and the real people who are opposite, looking in. From button to bicycle to the question of the interface, of the prosthetically mediated experience. And of course we start with simple things like buttons and switches. The foot switch on the left will trigger a breathing action in my belly. The button on the right will inflate that brick wall and make it sort of bulge out. And I still like switches, you see, because this is also just a switch. You pull the switch and they fall. And then you can blow into tubes and inflate balloons and change the shape of the projection screen. The wind here is causing this neon sculpture to change its animation forms from gentle waves to very agitated waves, depending on the wind speed. So this is reading the wind speed. Listening. This panel allows you to listen to what's going on inside the building. Is it working? Okay, we're losing image again every now and then. Okay. Actually, there's a microphone on the stage in the building, so anybody passing by can eavesdrop on what's happening inside the theatre at any time. And the narrative landscape is a joystick. A joystick, again, is a ubiquitous interface. This joystick, though, could be moved left, right, forwards and backwards for panning in one plane, but also it was a joystick that could be pulled up and pushed down so that you could travel in the vertical axis. And developing new custom designed joysticks, this was for points of view. You see, this joystick can be rotated 360 degrees and angled 90 degrees. Basically what the joystick represents is your point of view. And by moving it, you actually move your point of view. And the joystick also doubles as an audio mixer. So you see it does two jobs. One job is it modulates the visual space and expresses your point of view. And at the same time, it mixes 15 audio channels. So that depending on where you are in this virtual space, you are also hearing one or other of these 15 audio channels. And then a 3D mouse, Heinrich Klotz here, playing with this 3D mouse. And this is a little homage. This is the moment when we can connect to yesterday's, what was it again? Our atoms, our radical atoms. Here are some radical atoms. The only thing is they're very slow. It's a screen where every pixel is a ping pong ball, and it's basically a monochrome screen in the sense that there are just two colors, yellow and blue, and you can finger draw a pattern or images, and this machine will build that image for you by sort of injecting balls from below and choosing the appropriate color. It takes about, 5 to 10 minutes to refresh one frame. And it's a very noisy undertaking. Okay, sensors, optical sensors, just walking past this wall, and you see the optical sensors which are then triggering bubbles so that you leave a trace of bubbles in the wall. This was an installation in a swimming pool. So as you enter the pool, you pass this wall and trigger a trail of bubbles. Another pathway, a sort of sensor of beams. Basically, as you walk towards the screen, you are triggering changes. So your journey to the screen is a journey that triggers the transformation of the image. And again, the legible city, the bicycle as the interface, as perhaps one of the most transparent and accessible interfaces of all. And the virtual museum, the seat as an interface, just leaning back, leaning forward. Just the way in which it's not your hands, but it's just the expression of your body which allows you to navigate the virtual world. Leaning forward, leaning back, rotating slightly to the left, slightly to the right. Look at this silicon graphics machine here. Can you believe that? That thing is, what can I say? One thing you'll notice here is that in this virtual museum, there are a number of rooms. But the first room is the room you are in. And the first room contains the screen, the rotating platform, the silicon graphics machine, and the chair in which you are sitting. But what it's expressing here is that the chair is empty. because virtually you have moved your point of view away from the chair. So you are no longer sitting in the chair in the virtual world. So you see the re-representation of the space you're in, but now it tells you that you are not there. Just pushing as an interface, pushing hard. There was a lot of friction, so you had to work hard to get this monitor to turn. And again, the mannequin, the surrogate body as the interface. And here, looking at, reading the lines on your hand as to create an idiosyncratic moment of connection with the visual space. And your hand lines go into the visual space, and you see the lines of your hand connects with the history of all the other people who have done this. Their lines are also there. From seeing to viewing, the question of technologically augmented perception and proprioception. And the question was and is art a perceptual prosthesis? I was quite fascinated at one time with the phenomenon of anamorphosis. Again, a lot to do with point of view, where you are in relation to the world of representation. This is a drawing table, but from different angles it becomes a complete abstraction. Only from one point of view do you see all the elements coming together. And this is anamorphotic video, actually a text work done together with Dirk Groeneveld. You see a monitor upside down in this bed, and the text is around the cylinder, so you read the text in the reflection in the cylinder. And this is a little video of the actual video. This is the video that's playing on the screen, and the cylinder is positioned just around that red center. And again, the optical system which allows this to be done, allows an image to be projected on that screen, and you see even from this angle, it is totally invisible. It is only at the point that you are looking directly in line with the projection that you see this conjunction of two realities. And here also a certain irony, because we are watching, myself and my associate Theo, building the screen. So we are building a surface which will then block the view of the room. And other experiments with these strategies, these optical devices which allow augmented reality, and Unwanted Tear, and at that time I was doing lots of drawings which maybe have some resonance now with the Oculus, but looking for strategies to create a comfortable enclosure that will allow these images to be positioned. And this is also an important experiment which involves connecting a sensor to your head so that you can control the movement of a pair of projectors. So basically, as you look around, projectors follow your point of view, and you look through a window into a surrounding virtual world. But the movement of the camera or the movement of the projector is linked directly to where you are looking, what you want to see, and how long you want to spend looking at something before you move on and look at something else. So in a way, this connects back to the virtual museum with the chair. It's the way in which you can just use your body to express your desire to look, to see, and then another extension of this recently with a work which involves tracking the movement of iPads so that you can explore the Dunhuang caves in China. These wonderful. There is a one-to-one embodiment of the cave in this space, and as you move through with the iPad, you're exploring that space one-to-one scale. From situation to in situ, the question of context, spaces and places of intervention and cultural rehabilitation. These are self-evident. I'll let you just look at them and get the vibe. And also this certain, I don't know, a sort of ludic surrealism of being able to embed these unexpected situations. But this is an inflatable tube, so it was also a very playful object. And actually going into architecture, a grass-covered dome, and into architecture proper. It was for a festival, for an art exhibition in Sonsbeek in Arnhem. And also a number of installations in public spaces. This is a public library, and whenever anybody does a search on a certain keyword, that keyword appears on this sort of sculptural object below, but then it's translated into binary code and just becomes a sort of dance of zeros and ones on the ceiling. So basically it's every keyword that comes in, that is being, that's coming in from users of the library, ends up activating this, you could say chandelier, this binary chandelier, which is in the entrance. So it's actually monitoring the user's activity. And other works that I've done as public works with LEDs, this is maybe the most recent done for the ZKM, for the, again, text it moves down through these panels so that basically it accompanies you as you walk towards the entrance of the ZKM. From multiplicity to self-generative multiformity, the question of artistic singularity and wherein lies the authorship. An early work that expresses, let's say, the shift from the artist who is making a singular image to the sense that image making, what's interesting about image making is the process and the multiplicity. So suddenly it's not one drawing, but it's thousands of drawings. And these thousands of drawings are then photographed onto 16mm film and then constitute this movie. We will bring up the sound for this. We can make it loud. So this is a film loop. I think it runs for about 10 minutes, and it was meant never to be started and stopped, but just to run forever. And again, this multiformity, the fact that something like these inflatable tubes would be handled by public and there would be just a chance, it would be a chance sculpture that would be created by by people, by the users. And here also an experiment. This is a screen. It's divided into 16 sections, visibly divided. There are 16 speakers and 16 discrete audio channels. Each channel is controlled by a voltage-controlled amplifier, and the visitor is able to manipulate images that move across the screen. And depending on the position of these images and the brightness of these images, you are actually mixing the 16 channels. So your exploration of the visual space is at the same time the mixing of a 16-channel audio work made by Harry de Wit, specially composed. So the composer's challenge was to create 16 discrete channels of sound which could be mixed together in any possible relationship, in any, because it was an unpredictable outcome. And the hand lines then generating the open-ended artwork, and work that I've done a number of times with associate Ben Linterman. Well, these are algorithmically determined transformations. Again, you could say the thrill of an artwork which will never ever repeat itself, which will always offer a different variation of itself. And also Unmakeable Love, this community, it's an engine, a sort of almost a sort of A-life engine. So they do their thing and they follow certain scripts that are determined by Beckett, but at the same time it's a continuously improvised space. One can watch it for hours again and watch a situation which never repeats itself. And this community who form, they will never ever fall the same way twice. Every fall is a unique event. This is a recent work with a Singaporean poet, Edwin Thambu. We've recorded him reading 28 of his poems. He's positioned around you in a 360-degree screen, and you have a microphone in your hand which controls a virtual microphone, which basically allows him to speak wherever the microphone is.
Knowing that bones are made from earth, when I say that sunlight, impure but beautiful, drink from the nectaries, you can never know when the erstwhile hidden eye, sworn and sealed by men, not saints.
So these are 28 poems over his whole career, and here they are being dynamically mixed by the viewer. You are basically cutting between basically reconstructing his poetic oeuvre by just moving between these different readings. So from citation to cultural reformulation, the question of the past in the present and the future of the past. Going back to this work points of view, the space of representation are all Egyptian hieroglyphs, and the viewer is given a little dictionary so that you can read the space, read the identities. In this work revolution, actually what you are looking at are images. One rotation of the screen shows 200 revolutions since the French Revolution. And it was an object made for the bicentenary of the French Revolution. So we are celebrating 200 revolutions since the French Revolution in one revolution of the screen. And of course you can stop at any moment to examine that particular moment in history. And this work, Heaven's Gate, it basically oscillates between two iconic iconographies. One is the Baroque view up into the heavens, and the other is the contemporary view, the contemporary satellite view, down onto the planet Earth. So the whole piece is just an oscillation between looking up and looking down. And you remember the projection is also done on the ceiling and below you under the mirror. And the golden calf, of course, quotes the golden calf. And recently, a big work we've done is with the Magao grottos in Dunhuang. This is an extraordinary UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's around 500 caves which have been carved and painted and sculpted by Buddhist monks over a period of over 1,000 years, all in one location. And this is a work which just is looking at one particular cave and strategies for representing that cave, one-to-one scale, and being able to explore its iconography and its narrative content. So certain strategies like a digital magnifying glass, which allows you to zoom in and look at very fine details of these paintings. And also there's a massive program of digitization. So basically we inherit very high resolution gigapixel images and laser scans of the cave, and these are then put together and enable us to do this kind of visualization. Okay, from no-thing to immersion, the question of art's corporality, an imaginative or imaginary construct. So this was a sculpture which I had hoped would be built on the main square in Rotterdam. The fantasy was that there would be an enormous text which would say nothing. And it was really something which interested me, the fact that we were not making things anymore, but we were creating situations. One of the phrases was, these are situations of opportunity, opportunity to engage, opportunity to have experiences. A tube over the Maschsee in Hanover, 250 meters long. You could just walk across the lake through this transparent tube. And some fantasies that also lead to a more recent work, Place Humpy. A number of projects recently have been involved in the challenge, let's say, of reimagining important heritage sites. This is Hampi, a UNESCO World Heritage Site in India. You basically can travel through a virtual representation of Hampi. Hampi here is built around the body of Hanuman, the monkey god. In the Ramayana, Hampi is the home of Hanuman and his tribe. And you can basically just drift around and go from location to location and enter these cylinders which then surround you. Okay, from performance to database narrative, the question of narrative after storytelling. There was a series of performative works that I was very engaged in the mid-80s. I did a project with Genesis with Peter Gabriel for his tour, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, and it was thousands of slide projection. I mean, this was in the early days of getting media on the stage. So 3 pairs of slide projectors and, I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000 slides with a continuous, let's say, narrative accompaniment to the performance. And also the legible city, a narrative space, traveling through the virtual city, reading its text and by creating conjunctions of readings as one moves from one direction to another. So this is the Amsterdam database. This is the Karlsruhe database. And maybe I'll just go back quickly. These are real stories that are being told. I mean, these are historical anecdotes. If you, let's say, conscientiously travel along one canal from beginning to end and back the other way, you can read, for instance, the story of someone who lived there in the 19th century, an actual record of an actual narrative about that person. And this is an experiment in, let's say, 360-degree cinema, where actors are performing in a 360-degree space, and you are able to move your point of view, basically move from one narrative to another. You are eavesdropping on different people at different tables, depending where you are looking. And after a while, when you experience this work and start to move through it, you realize that even though each of these people at each of these tables seems to have an independent life and an independent story, you begin to see all the connections between their narratives. And you realize there is a meta-narrative that is holding the whole work together. And this is a piece done in Melbourne. You visit different neighborhoods, especially neighborhoods that have a very strong ethnic identity. And I looked for, let's say, local comedians, and I got them to tell jokes. And I hung them upside down, so they told a joke. So you could visit different neighborhoods in Melbourne, and in each place you would find somebody, a comedian hanging. Melbourne has a strong thing about comedy, and there's a comedy festival every year. So it seemed to be an appropriate approach to... This is T-Visionarium. This is 30,000 video clips. This is some notion of how one could recycle televisual, trash, transform it into kind of Lego blocks, narrative Lego blocks, and then reassemble that at your own pleasure. So here are fragments of about 24 hours of broadcast television, and you can click on any one of these video clips, and metadata will then find associated video clips, and then you can actually cut and paste. You can link them together and create your own movie sequences. So, for instance, somebody on the phone, you may then click on it and you'll get about 30 other people on the phone. Then you can edit them all together and they're all speaking to each other on the phone. So you've got a movie that you've built of people talk, And this is a work done recently for Melbourne Museum. You probably know that in most museums, only about 10 or 15% of the collection is on view. This is about 50,000 artifacts from the collection, which is not on view. It's basically a machine which allows a viewer to explore the totality of a museum, of a museological archive. And each one of those rainbow bands is one collection of objects. And every time you find an object, it will also give you links to other collections that are related to that. So it's the beginnings of an attempt to create a mechanism or an environment, an immersive environment, which one can explore the totality of a museum's collection. Okay, I'm managing to get through this. It's amazing because we're still in time. So this is the last chapter, From Art to Art to Art, the necessity of art's perennial reinvention, which can sometimes be a ludic undertaking. So this is the work with John Latham, Book Plumbing in the 60s. I'm just showing you this so you can maybe get the vibe. And you can maybe recognize people. I'll point them out to you. Barry Flanagan. I've stopped it there, okay. And I did something a little, it's a bit arrogant or maybe a bit pointless, but I actually tried to register this in America as an artwork. There is a legal office where you can register artworks. And I thought, yes, I need to be able to, I want to establish that this is a bona fide sculpture. But it was rejected, this application. This is Look Up Tokyo. It's one of a series of works done in a cupola where you basically lie down and look up to the ceiling. And again, this wonderfully ubiquitous pleasure of just being able to move around an iPad around to explore a virtual world. And this is the last work I'll show you. It's a recent work I did, a simple partnership with a very famous Chinese calligrapher, Wang Dongling. And of course, with the GoPro hysteria that is around at the moment in so many different contexts, I couldn't resist putting a GoPro on his brush. And we will now watch the first person, not shooter, but the first person painter. We will see the point of view of the brush. He's well known for for sort of actionist calligraphy. This particular painting is 30-meter long banner, which is now hanging in the School of Creative Media in the atrium of our building. So here's a slide which you've seen before because Anne-Marie found it as well. I couldn't resist showing it to you. And the reason is that basically everything you've seen today has, there's more, if you want to go deeper and see it described in more detail, it's all there on this website. The Ars Electronica basically catalyzed my commitment to getting about 130 works well documented on this website. And also there is a sort of souvenir box, a sort of box set which you can buy at cost price, I think just outside here. Emery was wearing it. Okay, thank you so much for your kind attention.